Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Come along with me to a town beside the sea. We can wander through the forest and do so as we please. Come along with me to a cliff under a tree where we gaze upon the water as an everlasting dream. Good morning.
Good morning.
I would rather legalize every single drug except marijuana just to annoy the potheads.
They'd never shut up about it.
Well, yeah, but this is for their benefit, though, because what are they going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
That's all they've talked about for 20, 30 years is legalize it. That's their only policy position.
Mm-hmm.
It's their only religious point.
True.
It's their only social conviction is that weed should be legalized. And now that it appears that it is, what are they going to do? It's like, be careful of what you wish for, because if you get it, you're just...
Well, the Libertarian Party, as currently conceived, just lost, its entire reason for existence.
I know. Well, I mean, but also...
I mean, there's still, kinky sex stuff.
Right.
They can wave the flag for that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what else does the Libertarian Party want? No taxes. That seems unlikely.
Good luck, guys.
Right.
I mean, I'm with you, but
let's not have that. Seems unlikely.
Yeah.
To fly. And yeah, Oregon, or Washington, one of them, they legalized all drugs. My position is legalize heroin, methamphetamines, fentanyl, crocodile, all of them.
Bath salts.
Except weed.
Okay.
Weed should be thought of as basically murdering an old person. Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
You want your grandma enslaved in the weed fields?
Yes.
Picking bud.
And now, what is Joe Rogan going to talk about on his podcast?
I don't know.
With every other guest, regardless of their expertise, he brings up why you should legalize weed.
Like talk about DMT, I guess.
I guess. Is that going to be legal now in the new world?
Maybe that's the new thing we're going to get upset about.
It's very reminiscent of Soma in Brave New World.
What, DMT?
No, weed.
Oh, yeah.
Like this drug that pacifies the population.
Mm-hmm.
I guess people are okay with greatly restricted freedoms as long as they get to do like one thing.
Yeah. Well, we're free to debase ourselves.
Oh, it's a good one. We're free to debase ourselves.
That's been the giant gaslight of the 20th century and the 21st century. Is that freedom means free to debase yourself. And then as long as I can put it in whatever I want,
right.
It doesn't matter if I have actual free speech and privacy rights, and doesn't matter if my vote counts or not. As long as I can do something disgusting.
To do things that communicate diseases.
Right.
I am free. As long as I'm free
to be
an American
Well, at least I know I'm free.
What cultural moment produced that song?
I don't know.
Because was that the 80s and the end of the Cold War? Or
or 90s maybe. That's Lee Greenwood.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, because that seems like you couldn't really sing that today. I mean, we just did.
Well, I think the Stone Mountain Laser Show called Lee Greenwood and said, "Bro, we need a big finale here. We got the devil went down.
To be American.
We need something everybody can relate to."
I know I'm free. And then someone was like, "But wait a minute. Are we really free if we don't have public poop sex?" And they were like, "No, you're not."
No.
And I said, "Are we really free if we don't have marijuana?" I mean, the thing is, marijuana isn't that awful, but it also is if you do it in the quantities that potheads do it in.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you were to smoke weed, the problem is people smoke weed like they smoke cigarettes.
Right.
Here's the problem. Most of the population experience with weed is they got dragged to a party at some point in college, maybe a couple times, by their weed friend, and he forced them to smoke a joint.
Mm-hmm.
And then they thought, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. It was fine. And now, but then they're fine because they only did it a couple times. But their weed friend is broken or Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
One of the two.
Yeah.
And Joe Rogan is also broken because he looks like a giant thumb. And he's very short. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I didn't know that.
Joe Rogan is like maybe 5'1".
You're kidding me.
I mean, he's really short. He's not 5, but he's short.
Okay.
Like, you know. I think he's always had a bit of a thing about that, and that's why he's on Spotify now.
Mm.
You know, because you can't.
Short manlet Faustian rage, I believe they call that.
Yeah, you need the, and he needs the weed to. So I don't know. I'm not against the weed being legalized so much as I'm against stoners.
If you smoke a joint when you wake up every morning, it's not just something you're doing for fun.
Right. Ah, yes. Yeah, proud to be American. But then they're like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Can we do heroin in the streets of San Francisco? No.
No.
Well, then are we free to be an American?
Mm-mm.
I guess not. And then there's like, I guess we need to provide you needles.
Yeah.
Proud to be an American where these times. No, wait a minute. Can I, as a man, put on a wig and compete in women's sports?
No.
No. Then I'm not free. Proud
free.
to be an American. You see South Park's Go Woman, Strong Woman?
Heather Swanson is actually joining us now. Miss Swanson, how does it feel to be competing today?
I can't tell you how free I feel now that I've started identifying as a woman. Now that I can compete as female, I'm ready to smash the other girls.
And is it correct you just started identifying as female 2 weeks ago?
I'm not here to talk about my transition. Let me tell you something, Dingleberry.
David Perry.
I'm gonna roll up the other women here, and I'm gonna smoke them.
No.
It's pretty great.
Okay.
It was Macho Man Randy Savage entered a women's strength and fitness tournament.
Oh, beautiful.
Competing as a beautiful woman, but he didn't change anything at all. He just said, "I'm a beautiful woman, and I'm here to take names." It's pretty great.
That sounds great.
How are you today?
I'm great.
Yeah, your line about you're free to debase yourself.
Yeah.
Is very true. You're free to do the things that make you weaker.
Yeah.
More isolated and more alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other things, and they sell that to you as some sort of empowerment.
Right. That really has.
It's a spell. It's a magic spell.
Well, they took. It's like Indiana Jones when he steals the little idol and he's got the bag of presumably like diseased needles and poop. Okay, that's probably what's in that bag. And he took the golden little idol of freedom
wait.
And he slyly replaced it with a bag of diseased needles and poop. But the jig is up because they don't weigh the same. And the trap has been sprung, and now there's a giant boulder rolling down to flatten us all.
Yeah. It's a good. Yeah, it's presentation, disappearance, return. That's the formula of the stage magician.
That's very magical.
You present the thing, you disappear it, you return. Also known as presentation, destruction, and resurrection. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And so really everything, when you stop and think about it, is a form of magic.
This is a good current events lens to look at things through, I think.
Also, problem, crisis, solution.
Yeah.
Problem, crisis, solution, presentation, disappearance, restoration, or presentation, it's all the same thing. Problem, crisis, solution. Boom, 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 boom.
So is the Trump presidency going to be a presentation, destruction, resurrection magic show?
Yes. I think that. Well, yeah. So Trump, I'm still pretty positive is going to win, or I don't know about win, but be inaugurated again.
Right.
Simply because, and people are like, "Meh." But the laws of narrative govern the universe more than the laws of physics. And it would be the script would be the most potent.
Yep.
If that were to happen. The only alternative is that might possibly get more viewers. Is that Trump loses, but then is reelected in 4 year. But I think that is unlikely because of his age.
Good point. Yeah.
So I think that the script, it's like if you have an actor, you're doing Friends, but the girl that plays Rachel is starting to get a lot of wrinkles.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, we want to wrap it up this season. And not 4 years from now.
Yeah.
Because we're losing viewers. Ross is getting creepy. Joey's getting fat.
Yeah.
It's not like The Simpsons. The Simpsons can go on for 30, 40 years because the characters don't get old. Except the lady that played Mrs. Crabapple or whatever died. But that's okay. You can just replace them. But with real actors, you have to wrap it up. You got to wrap it up. So I think that for maximum chaos purposes, that is what will probably happen. But I don't know. I'm gonna bet on it.
I've been, my standard reply on Twitter to current events has been, quote, chaos was the goal, unquote.
I've seen you say that.
And
you're like a bot. Chaos was the goal.
I'm the chaos was the goal bot.
Because look at my Irish breakfast. Chaos was the goal.
Yeah.
Look at my. Did you say it there?
I'm gonna start broadening its use now. Thank you.
Hey, did you see those? Let's do a little bit of mystical house cleaning.
All right.
Did you see those monoliths?
Yeah.
The monoliths?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the monoliths for a second.
All right.
So first of all, there were like 3, I'm pretty sure. One in like Romania, one in Utah, and one in California. And there was a thing going around the internet, which I didn't check, was that the center, like if you drew these on a map and looked at the center of the triangle, it was the exact center was the Pyramid Bass Pro Shops in Tennessee. Which is that glass pyramid.
Is this true, or is this something you read that
I've seen it going around as a rumor. I didn't check it, but I can't imagine that is accurate. Because Romania is really far away from Utah and Cal, and that would make a very long triangle. And I don't even know that Tennessee would be inside of it. And then I can't imagine that's accurate. I would think that the center of the triangle would be somewhere off the coast of like Connecticut. Just in my head.
I did see a diagram of this, and yeah, it was out in the Atlantic Ocean somewhere.
Yeah.
But before, when there was only two, I saw an article like if you draw a line between them the long way around, it goes right through some such, I don't even remember what it was now. And I said, oh, okay, so I got Google Earth out, and I drew a line between the two, and it went nowhere near any.
Yeah, people just say this stuff. You always got to check yourself.
Yeah, you do. You got to check stuff.
Because everything is not real. But so, first of all, it's obvious that they are man-made.
Well, they had, like, fasteners in them.
You can see the rivets. Yeah.
Aliens don't use fasteners or rivets of any kind.
Not that we know of.
No, they couldn't. They're too advanced for that. Maybe
aliens maybe they're hipsters on manufacturing.
That'd be like a gas filling port on a UFO.
I know.
You know,
it doesn't,
or like turn signals.
Right. But it looks it's they're rivets, so it's obviously a mammoth, and it's also stainless steel. It looks obviously stainless steel. Now it looks like a thick piece of stainless steel.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that it's alien is we can toss that out. Is it a marketing promotion for some sort of movie?
Probably.
That's what I thought at first. Like, this is going to be some, like, Blair Witch Project movie.
Oh, I got it. I know what's going to happen.
Movie.
I know what's going to happen. So, a news organization is going to get their hands on one, and they're going to dissect it, and it's going to be full of the new spicy ranch avocado Doritos.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, that would make sense. Except I found out that the one in Utah has apparently been there for 5 years. At least.
That's a twist. Okay.
The story of the guy discovering it. So someone was employed by Utah to go in a helicopter and count bighorn sheep.
Okay.
Because they like to count the sheep.
Man, I want that job.
Your sheep counter. And he was flying over and he sees this shiny thing. So after he gets done, he walks out to that spot and looks at it and he finds this. But apparently that was 5 years ago and it only recently made it to the news. And apparently this thing's still there.
Oh.
So if it was a
which one was torn down by a bunch of right-wing internet bros and replaced with a cross?
Right. So and then there's this story that the one in California, I think.
Okay.
I haven't seen any pictures of this though.
Yeah. I just saw the written
but there
description.
was a story floating around that there were some in the middle of the night, a bunch of MAGA guys in red hats went out to the desert and they smashed the monolith and tore it down and drug it away, screaming apparently to the desert sky, because I don't know who else would be around to hear it. Jesus Christ is king. We don't want no aliens, illegal or from space. Or something like that. And they put up a wooden cross in its place. Now, this is a very detailed story that, again, has a lot of holes in it. And one, I haven't seen a picture of this cross or a smashed up monolith, which seems like you would take pretty quickly. And two, it's out in the middle of the desert. I don't know that so many mega people cared about the monolith. If anything, they probably thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And then three, I don't know that you would scream threats in the desert. Who is there to hear them scream this?
This sounds like something written by an Associated Press fact checker.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So I don't think that's true. I think that's about on the same level as the middle of the triangle being the pyramidal Bass Pro Shops in Memphis.
Yeah.
What they're for, I don't. Maybe some art installation.
Right.
Because that's art these days. Painting something pretty and realistic is not art.
No.
But putting up a hastily constructed slab of metal in the middle of the desert. Now, that isn't it. The one in Utah is out near Moab. Have you ever been to Moab?
I've been through there. I haven't really spent much time, though.
Well, the thing about Moab is it's 50% normal people trying to get by in the middle of the desert on mostly tourism.
Yep.
Okay, so there's an incentive to make something there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 50%, what would you call them? Desert psychedelic warriors.
Cool.
Who are like 47.
Mm-hmm.
And they spend weeks just hiking in the desert, sometimes dying, and never coming back, just tripping on mushrooms.
Woo.
And I could see them doing a sort of ritualistic magic thing out there.
Okay.
But neither of these explain the other two, right?
Right.
So I think whatever it is, it's not aliens.
Mm-hmm.
It's that because of the rivets and the stainless steel. If it was made of like, I don't know, element 113 or something, sort of glistening, and it had no obvious construction thing, then you might say, oh, that's interesting. Right. But this is just some piece of metal.
Well, everything made by aliens is 3D printed, obviously.
Well, I think that's probably true.
Or 4D printed.
Yeah, 4D printed. Yeah. So there's that. The other one is in our mystical house cleaning is that the Christmas star this year. You ever seen that?
No.
Well, Jupiter and Saturn are basically going to be side by side.
Oh yeah, on the 21st.
Yeah, it's supposed to, but the picture going around is this brilliant star, right? That will not be what it looks like. I'm just telling you now. It will look like a brighter Jupiter.
Okay.
It will not look like the shining Christmas. I'm just saying.
I'll still show up for that. Just temper your expectations.
It'll be nice.
Well, when all the nuclear explosions go off, that'll be pretty.
Right. Number 3, there was an article going around the Daily Mail and a few others about a leaked Pentagon UFO photo from an airplane. Like, so there's a guy flying a jet, and he sees there's a picture. You see the side of his head, because it's like, imagine like a jet fighter pilot with a GoPro on his head.
Okay.
Or behind him, or maybe his co-pilot behind him has a GoPro. And there's like a flying silver cube in the sky over the Atlantic. And that's just Project Bluebeam.
Is that all that is?
I mean, they're going hard on this alien stuff. I don't know why. But they're going hard on all, like, because first of all, this one doesn't look very good. It's like, this is a silver cube. It's like, that is not.
Well, what's one of the few things that could kind of be the palate cleanser after the great cataclysm of the 2020 election fiasco?
Well,
I mean, Yellowstone caldera collapse, okay? Like, alien invasion, nuclear war. It's going to have to be something on that level to really get us over the hump here at this point.
Maybe. I would have thought you would save aliens for later, though. Aliens is a big one to throw out there. Like, oh, there's flying silver cubes. Anyway, and then the fourth one before we move on was pretty sure we figured out the Ice Age.
Oh, do tell.
Pretty sure. There was this guy, I forget his name. Wish I had it, but he was proponting this theory that one of the problems with this was actually on Graham Hancock was talking about this. One of the problems with the current history of the Earth is this Ice Age thing and the recurring ice ages. And in Britain, there are like 7 bone caves. You ever heard the bone caves of Britain?
No.
The bone caves of Britain, well, they are these caves that have all these fossils in them. Right?
Right.
There. But the problem is some of the fossils are of like hippopotamuses and elephants and hyenas and animals that do not live in Britain currently.
Right.
And animals which it seems unlikely would have ever lived there given their temperature desires.
Yeah.
Right. Hippopotami don't like being cold. Right. So this has been a bit of a conundrum for a while, and people said, oh, in the past, between the ice ages, there was this global warming that heated up, and then the hippopotami migrated north, and but then they said, well, how did they get there? Because there'd be more water between England and France, not less, if it was hotter. Like, well, then you have to go, oh, well, they got there when it was colder and there was more ice, so there was more of a land bridge. But then you say, but why did they go there if it was colder? The whole reason you posited them there was when it was warmer. And now you're saying, yeah, but they didn't move there until it was colder. It doesn't. So the bone caves, and then the other problem is the Ice Age, at least the most recent one, you have a big, giant ice sheet over North America. Very thick, miles thick. It's what the Great Lakes are a puddle thereof, right?
Right.
Now. It extended all the way down into basically South Dakota. All of Canada and the top of the United States was covered in ice. And they say, oh, this is the Ice Age. But the same is not true for the same latitudes on the side of Russia and China. They're not covered in ice. No evidence that they were. So you say, well, if the whole globe was cooled down, shouldn't from the poles it be sort of symmetrical around the ball of being cold?
Yeah.
Right. But it isn't. And this has been a conundrum for a long time that no one's explained. And some guy threw out this theory, and he said, well, what if the rotational pole of the Earth moves? Like, or not even that so much, but like maybe the crust and the mantle on the spinning ball just sort of over time drift around the core. So they're moving around the pole.
They slip relative to each other.
They slip. So then he was like, well, wouldn't the most obvious explanation be that at one point the North Pole was more over, like where it's spinning at on its axis. The North Pole was more over Canada. And then that's why it was ice capped. And at the same time, that would make Britain a lot lower, make it hotter, right?
Yeah.
And then, so they wouldn't. So okay, and that would also lock up a lot of the water to make land bridges, right? Because the other side would be, if you do the antipode of Canada, you have a lot of ice sort of around the New Zealand area. And it also explains like why the sea levels appear to change as they did, because if the poles are directly over a landmass versus over the ocean, you don't get as much ice over just pure water if you don't have. So it makes sense. Maybe over long periods of time, the poles of the Earth shift around. And so what is now the North Pole was not always the North Pole, right? And then that explains so many things. Maybe. So
then, okay, that's super interesting.
This isn't accepted by science yet.
Hashtag science.
But it's accepted by us and bro science.
Right.
And all that, yeah. So, but I think it's an interesting idea. And I mean, it needs a couple more. It has anecdote. It has just circumstantial evidence for it. But we need to search for harder evidence. But anyway.
So Siberia should be, if this is true and the direction remains constant, Siberia should be getting warmer.
Right. So when the pole was over there, Siberia would be sort of more equatorial, which would explain all of the megafauna that used to be there that we find still in their fossilized. So I don't know. It's an interesting idea. It also brings up questions of like when people talk about ancient archaeology, it changes a lot. Because if people are like, well, what they're talking about, this and that, and being up in the cold, and they weren't cold, maybe they were. It changes a lot of stuff about ancient archaeology. If in fact, because they used to remember the idea that the continents moved and continental drift was nonsense until the 1990s.
Right.
People were like, meh, that doesn't happen. Even though some guy in like the 1940s was like, hey, does it look like if you put them all together, they sort of fit like a puzzle? Like all the little continents, they sort of fit together. Yeah. And they was like, maybe they were all one landmass at first. And they were like, nah. No evidence. And he said, I know there's no evidence yet. This is a hypothesis. I'm proposing we look for evidence. And I'm like, meh. And then
that's always the way when you hypothesize.
And he was right. Okay, so maybe also, maybe there's slippage on the various layers of the Earth. Because if you imagine a ball spinning, right, and it has different layers, you could imagine that one layer would spin faster relative to the others at times due to various things and frictions and whatnot.
This is great. I love this idea, and I'm going to use it to make really, really long timescale land real estate bets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. So anyway, that was just some mystical house cleaning. There was 4 big things in the news I felt we needed to cover that I did not feel was the main thrust of the show. But nonetheless, okay, so you were going to say something about something.
This is a public service announcement for our listeners about fake debunking, okay?
Okay.
So especially with all the election stuff going on, I've noticed an abundance of this, and I get into conversations with some of my friends who are taking, I don't know, more a more mainstream line of opinions on the matter than I.
So why are you still friends with them?
Well, I love them. They're great. They're great. They're great people.
I know, but
we just don't agree on our takes on current events. But we have very friendly
things are lies or fake.
Right, yeah. right. But we have more fundamental things that we agree on that form the basis of the relationship. But anyway, so I said, okay, I had this conversation last night about some of the election stuff, and I said, okay, I'm gonna go on Twitter, and I'm just gonna read the first 3 debunking articles that I see on there, because I follow a lot of left-wingers on Twitter just so I can see what's the counterpoint to the stuff that I am seeing. And so I came to a few of them. The first one was an AP article, Wagon Filmed at Detroit Vote Center Held Camera Gear, Not Ballots. And it goes on to explain or to describe this video of a guy bringing a wagon with boxes in it, and it was flying around social media. And everybody was saying, oh, here's evidence of ballots, blah, 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 blah. And they're saying, no, it was silly. It was a photographer. He said, that's my wagon. I was carrying photographic gear. But there's no clips from the article. And so but there was a link to another article that I clicked through, and that goes to another article debunking the same thing with no clips or stills or anything either that would help me identify, because I was trying to see, have I seen this video before? And so then I clicked through to another link, and then finally there's one still from the video. And then I click through from another link, and it keeps going around in circles, and I never actually see the original video. But I get a couple stills, and I realize I've never seen this video before. It sounds like other videos that I've seen,
right?
That were going around social media, but it wasn't the same video. I said, okay, so they're debunking, and I've been consuming this stuff at very high volume. Okay, I've been glued to it for the past month, and I haven't seen this video. So what they're doing here, in this case, is they're coming up with a video, they're vaguely describing it as being debunked, and then people are reading it and saying, oh, that video that I heard my nutball right-wing friend talking about has been debunked, right?
Right.
And it's dismissed in their minds, and it was almost dismissed in my mind until I clicked through, and I realized this isn't even the same video. And there's probably several videos along these lines that are still live out there in the world not being explained, that are being just dismissed away. So that's one example of what's going on here, and this circular network of debunking articles that never actually give you the original material, and it turns out are intended to cover a lot of things that they don't actually cover.
Yeah, it's like, have you ever played the game Vish?
No.
So this is a great example of how this works. So Vish stands for vicious circle.
Okay.
And the idea is it's a game you would play before people had internet, and you were sitting at home with nothing to do. But it's an instructive game, as so many of those games from that time were.
Yeah.
Is that you would each give each other a word in the dictionary, and then you would read the definition of that word.
Okay.
Okay. Like, you wouldn't do this out loud, but then you would take one of the words that was used to define that word, and you would look up its definition.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that the same again. And whoever could, doing that chain of definitions, get back to the original definition, the original word. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Would win. Whoever got there fastest.
Okay.
So, but it pointed out to you that there's a certain incompleteness to the meaning of things, because everything is basically circularly defined.
Mm-hmm.
If you just go around enough. It's like, well, how do you define this word? Well, it means by these 5 words. And then you look at one of those, and it's by these 5 words. You look at one of those, it's by these. And you do that enough, and if it's like, and that, it means, is defined by that first word. You're like, wait a minute. Does anyone know anything? You're like, wait, hold on. How are we defining? We're just defining a word by itself.
Yeah.
It's like if you said, what does aggressive mean? It says to be mean. And what's mean mean? It means to be aggressive.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, right. And you just do that with extra steps. And then you really get in a quandary.
Yeah.
But this is how so much of the news works, and debunking, and really any news, is that someone writes an article, and then, now do they have any evidence? Doesn't matter. You just write the article. Then the next person says, oh, that's been debunked. And someone goes, sauce? Where's your sauce? Where's your source?
Right.
And they go, here. And they link the article that has the headline. And the person's like, oh, he has a sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that first article was just made up out of thin air. But but it's used as evidence for the second article.
Right.
And then the third article says, oh, yeah, it's been debunked. Look at sauces 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. Now, 2 was just referencing 1, and 1 came out of nowhere.
Yep.
And then eventually, and then they do that sauce, and then article number 4 happens, right? And they reference sauces 1, 2, and 3. Then 3 or 4 days later, sauce number one updates their article to include sources 2 and 3.
Right.
Which came from them as evidence for their claim. Right. And it's a complete circle of masturbation.
And true. And the deeper you go, in a lot of cases with these debunking articles, the less credible the original source becomes. So, for example, I saw one talking about, here's the lead on it. Fact check, video from Georgia does not show suitcases filled with ballots suspiciously pulled from under a table. Poll watchers were not told to leave. So I clicked through this article that somebody posted, and then I clicked through to the source on that. And I don't remember how many layers it took to get there, but I end up at a website that I've never seen in my life called Lead Stories, written by a guy named Alan Duke, who I've never heard of. Mm-hmm. And it's quoting people that I've never heard of, giving information that is the opposite of sworn testimony given under penalty of perjury. Okay? And right. the article itself doesn't really debunk anything. It just gives opinions. It just recites other people's opinions about what they saw. And this is about that crazy Atlanta footage. And then there was another one. WSB TV, which is a big station in Atlanta, did an article called Georgia Election Officials Show Frame by Frame What Really Happened in Fulton Surveillance Video. And they go through this video and they're with this, I think he's like the Deputy Secretary of State or something, or in charge of elections. And he's acting all annoyed and pissy that people are questioning his election. Mm-hmm. And they're going through this video from the arena where all the counting was done. And they're showing, see, look, they brought the ballots in, and and they're see, it's all normal, it's all normal, it's all normal. And they're showing you kind of little clips and crops out of the surveillance video that was presented in court. And they're saying, this story is ridiculous. And so in the video, in the frame I'm looking at, there's a woman in a purple shirt just at the very edge of the frame where it's been cropped. You just see her purple shirt in the back. And then I went and looked at some other videos, and I found the same camera, but a different crop that's showing this woman in the purple shirt. Her name is Ruby, by the way. She's getting a lot of attention right now.
Hi,
and
Ruby.
Hey, Ruby. Hope you're doing well. It shows Ruby pick up a stack of ballots, throw it through the tabulator, let them run through the tabulator, take them back out when they're done counting, straighten them up, put him back in the tabulator, run him through again, straighten him up, and then put him back in the tabulator and run him through again. So Miss Ruby, on the same video that WSB TV is debunking, the same video, this woman counts a stack 3 times. Which is what has been alleged by many people in the Senate Oversight Committee hearings, and what has been alleged in sworn affidavits, that they saw people counting the same stacks of ballots over and over and over again, resulting in, of course, bad counts.
Yeah, which...
But it's like, it's 2 takes on the same video, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess my point is the debunking going on here, we're in like fog of war time, okay? You cannot believe anything you're seeing referenced in any media outlet whatsoever. The only way I found any of this is because I spent the hours watching the source material in its full scope and then drawing my own conclusions on it. And then when you do that, you look at the debunking articles and you say, this is the worst gaslighting I've ever seen.
Well, yeah. I mean, the worst gaslighting that we've ever seen in my life was probably the babies in incubators.
Oh, it's Saddam Hussein? Yeah.
Oh, he's put and then they put... See, what happens is, here's a mindset that 2020 should have taught you. If it hasn't, then I'm going to give it to you, and you can take this kernel of truth. If you're in your mind still saying, I saw it on video, it must have happened.
Yeah.
You've missed the point for several reasons.
Yeah.
One, often what you think you remember seeing on video, you did not. You see, and I do this too. Everybody does this. You create the memory in your head that you saw something on video that did not actually happen because there's some consensus that it did.
Right.
Right? That perfect example is Trump being like, oh, the Nazis were fine people.
Yeah.
Never said that.
No.
Nonetheless, they were like, you use pictures of a video and you say that, and then in your mind you're like, oh yeah. Now that has also happened with the right wing does that too.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not just okay. Then the other one is you never know the context of a video, really. There has to be a real smoking gun, like putting it in several times.
Yeah.
For you to really be able to say, like, oh, because otherwise, if she's not putting it in several times, like, oh, that's normal, that's what they do, and you like, well, maybe.
Right.
I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And then it's like with all this body cam footage from police officers. It's like you get a portion of it and it looks really bad. And then you see a little bit more of it later, and it's like, oh, well, maybe that was justified. And then you see a little bit more of it, and you're like, oh, that wasn't justified. And then you see more of it, like, maybe. And you go back and forth. Because the camera only gives you one... Cameras are not a really good representation of reality. They're a representation of one mono view.
Or they can represent whatever reality the editor and the narrator are giving you.
Yeah.
So if your only resource here is video, then you got to watch the whole thing.
If I take a documentary of you, listener, and we have a sit down and I do a documentary of your life, I can edit that to make you look good or horrible.
Correct.
No matter how good you could be the most saintly person. You could be Santa Claus giving children with cancer toys out of your own money, and I could make it look like you are a horrible person.
Yeah.
And vice versa. I can make horrible people because the video does not equal reality. People have got that in their heads because we watch so much video.
Yeah.
But video is not. Video is another story. It's just another story on the same thing. You know. But yeah, they've been doing that sort of thing for like people still to this day. Are like, oh yeah, I saw the video of weapons of mass destruction. It's like, no, there was not. Where is this thing?
Yeah.
It doesn't. They just said that, and Colin Powell held up a vial of white powder. Could have been sand.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been. Like, he's like, oh look, they got this stuff. I think he was saying it was anthrax, and then later we found out that anthrax was the strain of anthrax that the U.S. government used. So he just got a vial
Yeah.
From the and was like, yeah, looky here. And then it probably wasn't even anthrax, because why would he carry around a vial of anthrax to the Senate floor?
Seems dangerous.
None of it made any sense, right? And then it's all just presentation and show. It's showmanship.
Yeah.
It's stagecraft.
Right. It's exactly like this Georgia elections official standing there, pointing at the screen, saying this is just normal counting. Meanwhile, in that very video, the woman is taking stacks of ballots and counting them 3 times. It's just cropped off the edge of the frame. I mean, that's the stunning reframing of this material that is going on, like, every day in real time right now. It's just it's being introduced into the information ecosystem. It's being diced up, reframed, repackaged, and delivered in 6 different ways.
Yeah, it's debunking.
Debunking. Yeah.
Debunking and the Coomer and the debunker are the same person.
Yes.
Also, I love science person. They're all the same person. You gotta watch out for them, and you can recognize them physiognomically.
Yeah. Bloodshot eyes. Yeah.
Bloodshot eyes. They look like a thumb. Very short.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually like Joe Rogan. He is very short.
No, don't try to retcon this now.
See, now look, now I'm gonna.
Everybody heard you say that he's gay.
Yeah, he did. Everyone, I did.
This has already been debunked.
This has already been debunked. But see how that works? And now you're questioning, did he say that he was gay earlier?
Yeah. No,
maybe
you
I
all
missed
heard
that part.
You all heard Sumo say that Joe Rogan
Even though if you go back and play this,
gay.
you won't hear that, but none of you have the time or energy to go back and replay something.
Well, that's just been edited out. I'm the editor. I can
that's
do
right.
that.
You can do it. See? Yeah, it's debunking.
So did I edit it out earlier, or was it there? I don't know.
Knows.
I say it was there. And you're going to have to fight Joe Rogan now.
Well, he's so small. I feel like, he's very good at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't like wrestle him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing about jiu-jitsu people is if you just don't go to the ground with them, it's not that bad.
Yeah. Ranged weapons, people.
Right. So I think I would, if I was going to fight Joe Rogan, one, I would wait till he was off cycle.
Mm-hmm.
When he was feeling sort of down.
Yeah.
Because he has to be on roids for the rest of his life to make his genitals function at this point. Because you can't. You know, I know guys that they took just a little bit in like college or whatever, and it messed up they have to like shine. They do red light therapy on their balls just to make stuff work.
Really?
It's really steroids are really bad for you. They mess up your whole system. They really work.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're on them, you are more athletic, and they really work. Mm-hmm. But if you ever get off them, your hormone system is like, I mean, when I say a little bit, they took it for like 3 or 4 years, right?
Okay.
So like not just like once, but when you're doing this, it really can mess up your system for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're at the point that your skull is growing, you just gotta stay on that stuff,
right.
until.
So what happens if you quit? Do you just have endocrine system collapse?
If Joe Rogan quit taking his human growth hormone and steroids and Tribenarol and all the other stuff, if he quit taking that, within about a month, he would shrivel up and look like an old grandma. That's real. That would really happen.
Oh, man.
Because I've seen it happen to people that are like professional bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And they try to get off and because they're like, they go to the doctor. Rich Piana, who was my favorite bodybuilder, because he was just 100% in there. He was like, yeah, I do steroids. And I like to because it makes me look huge. And yeah, it has health problems. But whatever,
Yeah.
Live large, leave a giant casket. And then he died at 44, knowing full well that would happen. But he used to say, he's like, I knew a guy, he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, you're going to die if you don't stop this. And he said, getting on Mr. Olympia stage is my dream. And he went up there and he did it, and 2 weeks later he died.
Wow.
He's like, he sacrificed everything just to be on that stage. So A lot of people, because when you do all the make your muscles grow stuff, your heart also grows because your heart is also a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not good for your heart to be the size of a cantaloupe. It isn't good for you. And for long term, you know? I mean,
right.
you can win a sporting event in the short term, for sure. But long term, it's not the best for you.
There's your warning. We got a lot of PSAs today. It's good.
A lot of
helping
PSAs
our
today.
audience.
Yeah. I mean, I think the next thing to be legalized may be steroids.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if we got everyone in this country both roid raging, but also like sedated on marijuana, and just the constant psychological turmoil they would be in.
Oh man.
Because a lot of people do steroids now.
Really?
Like a lot of people. Like if you go to your local gym, just normies.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a couple of 35-year-olds whose skin looks like leather.
Is that from the steroids?
Yeah. Like because they get all veiny, and if you're one of the tells is that your whole skin starts to look like something off of a cow.
Okay, yeah, it gets real tough.
Or something. It gets real tough and like sort of excessively veiny.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff, and there's a lot of people doing it. And they're like, oh yeah, no, I'm natty, bro. Like, I'm sure you are. That natural skull growth.
Yeah.
So that was good. No, I think so. Today I wanted to talk about spells. You know about spells?
I'm about to.
First of all, magic is real and exists on several levels, and it's not overly different than stage magic.
Okay.
Like I was saying before, spellcraft relies on presentation, disappearance, restoration. Boom, bada boom, bada boom.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic formula, if you think about it, of all of the illusions that go on, like all that Penn and Teller do, all that David Copperfield does. And they present, they disappear, they reappear. Boom, bada boom.
Yep.
Okay. That's the basic thing. Okay. So, now keep that in mind, sort of in the back of your head as we go through some spells. And one of the first ones I want to talk about is the COVID spell. Now, the COVID is, at the moment, a very powerful spell. I don't think it's a long-lasting spell, but it's a powerful spell. Like, some spells are short-lived. Like, the moon spell is a long-lasting spell. It's starting to wear off now, the moon landing spell.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's starting to wear off now, because the longer we don't go to the moon, and the longer nobody else goes to the moon, and the longer we don't go anywhere, and the longer they keep saying, oh yeah, in 4 years we're going to go to the moon, which they've been doing since Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh yeah, 4 years we're going to go to the moon, said Clinton. And then Bush got up there and he's like, I am refunding NASA. With the aim that in 4 years we will go to... You can look all this up by the way. We'll go to the moon. And Obama gets up there. We're going to go to the moon. And then Trump goes, we're going to have a Space Force. Go to the moon. It never happens. It never materializes. The more people are like, did we ever go to the moon? But it's still it was a long... Now, the COVID one, the fundamental problem with the COVID spell is that as more people test... It relies on the positive testing. And as more people test positive, more people don't feel anything from it, and more people question it.
Right.
So it has a sort of built-in problem about it. Okay. So now in saying this, I'm not saying the virus doesn't exist. People are like, are you saying the virus? It exists, right? It's just that all the stuff surrounding it, lockdowns, masks, if you stand closer to 6 feet than someone, you're killing grandma, you can't go out. All of that's nonsense. Like, there was a lady last week said to me, I was with another person, and we had to go to her house because he needed to give her something, okay? And the person I was with and this lady are best friends. So we get there, and she comes out of her house, and she waves, and then she holds up her hand like this, we know the listeners can't see this, but like a stop, and then she waves on the other guy, and she goes, I'm sorry, it's just he's in my pod, and you're not in my pod.
What?
And I was like, what are you talking about? in your pod. And that was like I guess this is some COVID person language, like people that are really into COVID. They're like, you need to have your pod, your social pod, and you can be unmasked around your pod and like shake hands with your pod. But it was insane.
It's like a dolphins or something.
Yeah, it was insane. And then I just sort of immediately was like, oh, hi. And I just jumped out and pretended I didn't hear anything and came real close. Because I was like, oh, yeah. Because I was also carrying my ukulele at the time, which is a great tool for pretending I didn't hear what you said. Because I'm constantly strumming on it. Mm-hmm. And so like, and then I just start singing as she's talking. So I just get closer to her and start singing in her face.
Do you just walk around town with a ukulele?
I carry the ukulele everywhere.
Okay. Good to know.
All over town, yeah, everywhere I go. So anyway, it's almost always within arm's reach. So anyway, so this, and the narrative of the COVID thing is based on, people think it's based on science, but it's actually based on the 3 meta spells, which almost always exist, which is fear, shame, and guilt. Okay. All right. So, so people think that COVID is a fear-based spell, but it's only secondarily out of fear, because most people aren't scared of it for themselves. And if you ask them, like, no, I just don't want to get someone else sick. And that's what everybody says. It's a spell based on guilt. Okay. It's like you might potentially infect someone or be involved in an infection chain of people that leads to an immunocompromised person getting it and then dying.
Right. And
they've had it drilled in their heads that if they do X, Y, or Z, they are literally killing the elderly. It's primarily a guilt spell. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's a guilt spell shored up by a shame spell because people hate standing out from the crowd.
Yeah. And
so if the crowd is doing a thing, you can easily social pressure people into doing it also. Mm-hmm. Right? Even though none of it makes sense to anybody, like wearing a mask to walk into a restaurant and then sitting down to take it off, or pretending that eating inside a plastic bubble is more ventilated and safe than eating outside of a plastic bubble. Everyone, if they stop and think about it, goes, this is nonsense.
Yeah.
But guilt and social shame prevent them from doing it. So if you can get people on a spell of any of one of the 3, fear, shame, or guilt, you can control them. All 3, it's very difficult. Some people never get loose. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some people 40 years from now still worried about COVID. It's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and as an aside, let me go on a side and talk about just to let people know how silly it is. Have you seen the PCR test, the COVID PCR test? Mm-hmm. Okay, the PCR, if you don't know, that stands for polymerase chain reaction, which is the main test they use to say if you have COVID or not. Okay.
Invented by Kerry Mullis, that method, right? Didn't he have some things to say?
Invented by Kerry Mullis, who, as listeners of the show know, was a technique handed to him by an electric alien raccoon.
Yep.
So it's already sketchy. Because I don't trust tests given to me by electric rodents.
Super sketch.
But the PCR test basically is a genetic amplifier. It's very useful for a lot of things. It's a good test for it's what it's supposed to do. Like if you want to do a genetic analysis of a woolly mammoth that's been dead for a long time and has very, very little viable DNA in the sample of hair or flesh or whatever, you can take it out and then you put it in the dish and you do the PCR, the polymerase chain reaction, and it basically makes several copies of it. So it's a genetic signal amplifier.
Right.
You're like, I got a little bitty bit and I'm going to do this technique and now I have a lot of it. Now I have enough that I can analyze. Okay. But the PCR test has always been a laboratory test. It has never been, until this year, a diagnostic test, a diagnostic tool. Because it was widely recognized, until for some reason, this year, that it was not suitable for that. Because, as I said, it is an amplifier. So let's say that you have a tiny bit, you have like, well, let's back up for a minute. you're walking around with so many viruses in you all the time, and bacteria of every kind, like E. coli and staph and flu and anything you want to imagine, right? If you've been sexually active with multiple people, you're probably walking around with bits of HIV, right? But none of it matters because you're never going to get sick from any of it or pass it on to other people.
Right.
In any measurable quantity. Because there's this idea of an infectious dose, right? So if you get one microbe of E. coli in your system, the odds that is going to multiply to the point where you get sick is almost zero.
There are a lot of probabilities that have to come out with a given organism.
I mean, like really, really close to zero. In theory, it's possible, but in practice, it never happens.
Yeah.
You need a large, because your immune system is good, and viruses and bacteria are far from perfect, and they often fail to accomplish their goal of replication, right? And there's also like your stomach acid, which destroys stuff if you ingest it that way. Like if you ingest a bacteria through your mouth, 99% of the time it goes into your stomach acid and dies, which is one of the purposes of your stomach acid, right? There's so many checks and balances on this stuff. So it doesn't, and the idea that you're going to spread it is even less likely, right? But this stuff exists in the world and you pick it up sometimes. Okay. And you have little bits of it, and it doesn't go away when your immune system kills it. When your white blood cells kill the thing, there are little pieces of its genetic thing just floating around.
Yeah.
And they get cleared out of your body eventually, but not instantaneously. It takes weeks or months, right? So, if you don't have an infectious dose, the likelihood that you're going to develop the disease, because here's the thing, the medical community has conflated, which they used to not do, again, has conflated the virus with the disease. The disease is when you get sick. You have influenza on you almost all the time, right? But you don't have it in sufficient quantity to develop the disease. Get right?
Right.
And so most of the time we would say you don't have the flu. Even though if you could do like a Star Trek genetic analysis of every single cell and microbe on your whole person, you'd probably find several flu cells. Or flu viruses, rather. Right?
Yep.
Because they're everywhere. Okay, but for some reason we've conflated the virus with COVID-19. COVID, though, was meant to stand for coronavirus-induced disease. COVID, not the coronavirus.
Right.
See, coronavirus, not corona. Okay, there's all these conflation of words that shouldn't be conflated.
It's interesting because the language and the sort of the conceptual standards of medical science have been broken down and rebuilt to accommodate this narrative.
100%. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
And it's been somewhat maddening if you know what
and people don't know that has happened.
Yeah, no.
They're still using these terms as the way they used to be used, not knowing that they've been redefined.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, used to what would happen is you would feel sick and you'd go to the doctor and they would say, "Oh, you have the following symptoms. It's likely that you have X, Y, or Z. Let's do a PCR test to determine if you have one of these strains and if you do, one more than the others."
Right.
Okay. So if you were presenting with a disease, that was the diagnosis. Like the diagnosis was symptoms. You were primarily diagnosing things based on symptoms. Okay. Not based on the test. The test came to narrow down which genetic strain might be the primary culprit. Okay? Because if you do a genetic test for anything, any sort of, you're gonna find some.
Especially if it's been PCR'd. And
right.
Because is the PCR test, everything in the sample is going to get multiplied.
Amplified.
Right.
So,
and then you do a genetic test and you look for matching markers, and you could probably match a bazillion different things in that one amplified sample. Right?
Correct.
Okay, but they're just checked. So they amplify the crap out of it, and then they look for these particular markers within the sample, of which there may be many, many things present.
Yes. It's like, here's an example that our listeners will know. If you take a sip of beer and you get in your car and drive, you have some amount of alcohol in your blood.
Yep.
It is not enough to do anything.
Yep.
Or to be a danger. That's why they have this idea of if you do a breathalyzer and you don't hit the red mark, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
The PCR test, the COVID test they use is basically if the red mark is anything above 0.
Yeah.
If it's anything at all. So what they do is they're swabbing your nose and your throat, and they take it out, and then they say, oh, look, the PCR test found this thing, and it multiplied it 10 billion times, and oh, goodness, look, you have COVID-19.
Mm.
That does not mean that.
Yep.
That means that you had a piece, not even the full virus, you had a piece of the virus floating around your system, maybe, because it's not 100% accurate, maybe, and that means you had the virus, some part of it, not the disease. They say you have COVID-19. COVID-19 is the disease. The virus is the coronavirus. Two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, B, the concentration of the virus and the virus parts in your throat and nose is up to 10,000 times more than what you would breathe out.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you swab around in the top of your nose and then you multiply it in the dish by the 10 billion, you're getting like a sample that is 10 to the 8th more than what you actually could potentially breathe out.
Yeah.
Like 10 to the 8th. It's absurd. It basically is a meaningless metric.
Yep.
Pegging a PCR test is meaningless. It doesn't mean... That's why there's so many quote-unquote asymptomatic cases. Because there aren't.
And the deal with the PCR also is you can cycle it a certain number of times. And each time you cycle it, it amplifies it again and amplifies it again. And Kerry Mullis himself has said, look, you shouldn't be amplifying this thing so many times, yet they are, to get these positive tests.
Oh yeah, I mean it has never in the history of medicine been used as a diagnostic tool until this year.
Yeah.
Because it was recognized it's not good for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it doesn't translate to you being in any way infectious or in any way in danger of being sick. None of it means anything.
Yeah.
which is scary because it's like and what I think happened watching it unfold was people got scared of this thing and the government started screaming at doctors, give us a test. Give us a test. We need something fast. We need a thing.
Yep.
And the doctors were like, we don't have that. We've never had that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, give us something and say, I guess we can use this lab test. And they threw it at the politicians.
Yeah.
To like get them to go away. And now it's become like this thing. But it never... So anyway, when you see like cases go up, that is that doesn't mean anything.
It is absolutely meaningless.
It is absolutely meaningless. And it's not just me saying that. Ask people that really know about like immunology and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like real infectious disease doctors. Ask them like, hey, this piece, does that make any sense to They're like, no, it actually doesn't. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
And also that means that when you see these people dead, and it's so hard to say this to people because people are like, there's been 250,000 dead. And you go, no, there hasn't. Right?
Yeah.
Because the meme is so strong, is repeated so often by so many people that they really just, it doesn't even, I just go, like, no, because if you die and they swab your nose and they pick up this thing on they're going to register it as a COVID or COVID assisted death or whatever, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean anything. If you die of a heart attack and we swab your nose, you're going to have flu virus in it most of the time.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you had flu. or was contagious of flu. None of it. All of these numbers are I can't stress enough how absolutely nonsensical they are.
If we took the same standards and we're like testing people for anthrax or something, there would be people. It would be an instant anthrax epidemic because anthrax is in the soil, and every time you walk around in the woods, there's a good chance you're going to kick some up and breathe a little bit. But it's at such a small dose, it doesn't affect you.
Right.
Yet it would still. In the same way, it could be.
If you did a PCR test for anthrax, you would be like, "Oh my goodness!"
Right.
There is. So I can't stress enough how much of a spell COVID is.
Yeah.
It's just a narrative because people live into narratives.
Yep.
Like people on sort of quote unquote our side make fun of people on the other side for dressing up like they're the handmaidens from Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
Or saying we're Voldemort's army. Or whatever they're doing. Right? But people cannot help but live into the narratives that they're familiar with. This is the power because the universe, the world is run on narrative. Like when I'm going to talk about the spells in a minute, and people are like, "Did they do that on purpose?" Surely you couldn't do that on purpose. That's very complicated. You don't think of it like sometimes it is, but it's just like gravity.
Yeah.
This thing of like presentation, destruction, restoration is just written into the fabric of the universe. Is how it goes. Just a law of nature. Doesn't matter if anyone purposely does it. It's just going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Same thing. People will live into that. Like they can't help it. They're like, oh, this is why you get all these really cringe memes about politicians being their faces plastered on the heads of the Avengers heroes. Or women thinking that they volunteered as tribute in the Hunger Games. Because if you give a female or black people thinking that there's actually such a place as wherever was in the Black Panther.
Wakanda.
People thinking that that's real. Or for the same, like white people, white LARPers thinking that the Vikings were more of a thing than they were. Right. The Viking Age only lasted about 150 years. And it was very limited in scope. But anyway, people just live into these stories. Yeah. And you have to. Which is why spellcraft works. Because if you can alter the narrative, you can alter the way people perceive the world. C.S. Lewis and Tolkien understood this, and they both commented, like, speaking of Jesus, well, it just seemed, C.S. Lewis said, it just seemed obvious to me that if mankind was going to be redeemed, it would have to be redeemed by the best story. Right? And so, because that's how you have to, you incarnate through a story. You live into a story every time. People make fun of these people doing the Handmaid's Tale stuff and the Avengers stuff. Meanwhile, they're like, oh, I'm a level 7 cleric. And they make memes of themselves like in Oblivion or whatever. Right. That other one that was the sequel to Oblivion. I don't remember its name. Where you did Dragon Shouts.
I don't know, man. Skyrim?
Yeah. They do memes where they're in Skyrim or they're Pokemon catchers or something. And so it just, when you listen to people, they will always talk about things as though they're in whatever fiction they're in. And they have to. You can't not do that. Okay, so if you create, spellcraft is creating the fiction. And you live into things based on fear, shame, and guilt. Like, that's how you get it. So let's look at some of the spells on the right side, right, that people live into. Like, here we go. I'm going to be your typical Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh neocon.
Okay.
Oh, they're coming to get us. They're going to come get us. Biden's going to take our guns. Mandatory vaccine. Take away Medicare. No. Oh, they got my AR-15. I'll start a militia. Oh, they're going to replace us. Oh, the whites will be tranny Muslims, AIDS, Latinos, and under president. Oh, is this America now? Is this America? the constant screech.
Mm-hmm. That's the boogeyman.
Ted Cruz gets up there and says, "Oh, is this America now? Is this America? We can burn down a city, but we can't have dinner." It's like, no, you can have. You're the ones not having dinner.
Yeah.
You're the one not doing it. If you want to go burn down a city, you can go to. If you want to go also burn down a city, you can also go burn down a city.
Yeah.
You just don't want to.
Right.
Right? You could go do that too. No one's really stopping you from going and getting a gallon of gasoline and pouring it on a building.
Mm-hmm.
You know, gasoline is freely available, everybody. If you want to also burn down a city, you can. Right? It may have problems for you, just like it did for the people that did it over the summer. But you can do it. And no one stopped. Like, we're like, we can't have dinner. Like, just go have dinner. Just go do it.
Yep.
But see, this spoken into reality is this spell of like, they live off this thing of like virtue signal. It's like a reverse virtue signal where you talk about the hypocrisy of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, we can't do that. It's like, no one's going to make you take a vaccine. That's not going to happen. Like, here's the... Have you ever tried to put a 2-year-old in a car seat?
Yeah.
If a 2-year-old doesn't want to get in their car seat, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And they're small. No one is going to hold you down and make you take a vaccine.
Right.
Right? They may threaten to take away lollipops.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, if you don't take the vaccine, you can't use Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't care about Ticketmaster, right? And that's not gonna happen. Like, people are all worried. It's like they're gonna have sticks and carrots to try and get you to take it, but you don't have to. Just don't do it if you don't want to.
It might cost you something,
right? But just you don't have. It might. People might look at you askance.
Yeah.
Oh well, right? Or they're gonna come take your guns. Like, well, they can only take your guns if you let them take your guns. You have a gun.
Yeah. That's true.
Right? Like,
yeah.
If you let the government come take your guns, it's because you didn't care enough to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you did that. You know, like if all the countryside is armed and they somehow get disarmed, it's because they wanted to. That's why they do these programs. Like in Australia and New Zealand, they didn't like go door to door. They did these gun buyback stuff.
Yeah. To
try and coerce people into doing it of their own free will. Right? That's what it's like. They're not going to, you know, I mean, you just have to be, it's all just, the right gets off on calling out hypocrisy on the left and then just playing into it the whole time.
You still have to invite the vampire to come into your house.
You still have to invite the vampire in. Right. And yeah, and like and like people get worried about, I don't know. Anyway, that was something from that side. Okay. Like AOC. People are like, AOC, like if AOC controls your life, you suck.
True, man. She hasn't done anything.
She doesn't do, she just talks.
She's selling sweatshirts now.
She's a pretty Latina lady that talks.
Yeah.
And she has very intense opinions, but it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has intense opinions. It's fine. Chill out, right? Okay. So, but see, that's a fear spell. People get this fear spell of the tyrannical government and whatever. And the thing is, spells are self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
If you pretend that everyone in your life is a potential killer of grandma and has leprosy, has airborne leprosy, then people will begin to die because they have been cut off from other people. They don't have any money. They get locked down. All this stuff, right?
Yeah.
You have self-fulfilling prophecies. If you get so paranoid that the government is going to come take your guns, and then you start walking around going, Mulan Lobby, skulls on my truck, and no one's going to come take it, then that makes people think like you do need them taken away because you're psychotic.
Yeah.
Right? Like, people aren't worried about most of America is normal people that go about their lives doing normal stuff. being pleasant to other people, and they just have a gun there. They like to go shoot sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, right? But people get nervous and get scared of the people that are like waving it around all the time because they're afraid that the government's going to take it, which gives the government more emphasis to try to take it from you because you're the person people made red flag laws to be about because you're crazy because you're afraid.
If you're Fed posting on Discord because of your intense levels of paranoia, and then somebody comes to investigate you, it's because you were Fed posting on Discord about a bunch of you were talking some crazy stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Don't
you brought it on yourself, dude.
Right. So, okay, similar vein to the coronavirus is global warming.
Yeah.
And this is what they're going to do next. I'm going to tell you. They're like, well, we had the COVID lockdowns. Once the COVID hysteria dies down more.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm noticing that at least around the places I go, it's dying down a pretty good bit.
Yeah.
People are taking their signs off their doors, like, you got to wear it. Like, it may still be a quote-unquote mandate or law.
Well, I think what's happening, it's getting more intense in the dense urban areas and much less intense everywhere else. Like, we're splitting, we're going two different directions, which is an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, like, I was in a city yesterday, walking around, and everyone was wearing a mask outside, which, even if it was as dangerous as people are pretending, wearing in the open ventilation of the air, your odds, it's just none of it makes any sense.
Correct.
And I was walking around, I was at a crosswalk, and this lady looked at me askance, and I was like, hello. And she was like, ooh, just like, and everyone, like, I saw there was a great thing. It's like, it's just been great for me. Because it's like, oh, yeah, all these people call me a conspiracy theorist for years, and now they all look like lunatics.
Yeah.
They're walking around with, like, face shields, and they have, like, they've got a mask on their face they've painted to look like lips with lipstick. And it's like, you're an insane person. It's like, hello, crazy people. I just feel like I'm looking around an insane asylum. People are afraid to touch elevator buttons.
Yeah.
That's like... Guys, they're just, I don't even, and it's like, what I wanted to say, here's what I looked at her, I was like, don't worry, lady, I'm in your pod. We're part of the same pod. You just didn't know it.
You said that to her?
No, I wanted to, but I didn't know it. I don't know what that, I don't even know what that means, really, but I figured it was a COVID word.
That's the first time I've heard it.
And I was like, I just went back. Don't worry, I'm in your pod, and I can't transmit the virus because I've already had the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd be like, "Where'd you get the vaccine?" And I'd point to some sketchy building. I point to the local AIDS clinic or whatever and say, "Go
there you go."
Yeah. Go in there and get the vaccine.
I'm on the list.
Oh, that's a good one to go. Before we talk about global warming, let's talk about AIDS. How AIDS is a spell. AIDS didn't happen either. And what I mean by that is not that AIDS isn't real, but in the 80s, people, one of them Dr. Fauci again, because he's been in there forever, he's a swamp creature, was like, listen, AIDS is really bad and everyone's going to get it. It's equally likely to get it if you're straight, or gay, or male, or female, or black, or white, or Chinese, or if you have regular sex, or if you have weird alternative sexes. If you do, you're equally likely to get it, right?
Yep,
and everyone should be afraid. And everyone was. And it turns out then as now, it really is only a problem for extremely promiscuous gay men.
Yeah.
It's not even a problem for, like, non-extremely promiscuous gay men. Like, gay men that just have one or two partners, which isn't very many of gay men, let's be honest. Mm-hmm. But if they do, their odds of getting AIDS is super small. Promiscuous straight people, super small. Mm-hmm. It's almost zero for heterosexual. It's like almost none.
Yeah.
It's really just a problem for hypersexual gay men.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going around Africa being like, Africa, we need to give you all this money. You got to give us all your money. We're going to give you this foreign aid. You're all got to wear the condoms because there's just AIDS everywhere. You're all going to get the AIDS. And they freaked out a lot of Africans, by which I mean people that live in Africa.
Yeah.
And the governments of Africa got really... This is why the governments of Africa have kicked out Bill Gates a couple times. Because they're on to his schemes. Because they've been through this. They've been through the big pharma scheme before.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we got to do all this stuff. And then it turns out like now, like where if you go to... Like people are dying in the streets of AIDS.
Yeah.
It's fine. It does. It's like it wasn't a thing. Like all of the predictions about what would happen were just fear mongering. And it was just the same with the Zika virus. You remember the Zika virus from like a few years ago? Oh
man, yeah.
You gotta abort your baby because Zika. And it's like, what? Mosquitoes, therefore infanticide. That's a spell. You just have to.
Was that an argument being presented? Like, how does abortion pop into that?
Well, the Zika virus was spread by mosquitoes, supposedly. And the Zika virus gave you a high probability for having birth defects.
Okay.
So the solution was have an abortion if you get pregnant.
Like, just everybody have an abortion? Or like, if you got Zika?
They threw out that meme a couple of times. It didn't take.
Okay.
But... you just gotta say things. Just say it plainly, and it sounds ridiculous. Like
right. So that was kind of a subtext that was presented in that conversation.
And Ebola. They've been trying to get this pandemic panic to go for forever. AIDS, Ebola, anthrax, the Zika. It just finally took off for whatever reason with COVID. I think, frankly, because a lot of right wingers were fooled about it too.
Self-included.
Self-included, you're right.
I will admit, like January through May or whatever, I was pretty wound up about this thing, and then I gradually started to get wise to it. But yeah, I fell for it.
Remember all the videos of Chinese people falling down in the streets?
Yeah,
that doesn't happen. That was just the CCP making propaganda videos.
Yeah, they got me.
Yeah, fair play. But anyway, they've been trying to get this pandemic thing to go off for ages, and it finally took, right? And so now they're just exploding it for all it's worth. But Ebola was never going to get you. Zika was never going to, there was a guy that lived not too far from me that died of ostensibly AIDS. Okay? He was a nice guy. We talked. I enjoyed his company. I also noticed that he had sometimes 3 to 4 different cars there over the week.
Yeah.
Of male partners that would come to him for years. And he got basically all the STDs you could get. And it was a problem for him, and it didn't go well. But if you aren't doing that, like if you're not that level of promiscuous homosexual man, the odds that you would get AIDS and die is so small that it's not even a real big issue.
Yeah.
Anyway, some other ones, global warming. This is a spell that, again, primarily centered on fear and guilt. It's like, oh, we're going to kill the third world, right? But the oceans are rising, and they give you all these metrics, but then you just look outside and you say, Florida is right where it always was. Like they go, it's like, no, look.
Yeah.
I wish Florida had sunk, but it hasn't. You promised me Florida would sink, and I was excited about it. I went out and burned more gasoline. I drove more so that it would hopefully just sink Miami, but it didn't. And it's like think it's so crazy. It's so crazy. They're like people really will say things on these TV shows and on social media like the ice caps are melting, Indonesia is going to become a desert, Africa is going to melt, we're going to turn into the planet Venus, runaway global warming, we got to go live on Mars. Just like part of the push for colonizing other planets in the popular culture is we got to escape this planet because of global warming.
Yeah.
We've ruined this one. We could set off every nuclear bomb on Earth at the same time, and Earth would be a paradise compared to Mars.
True.
The idea that we've ruined Earth and Mars is better.
Yeah.
Mars doesn't have air. That's a big problem. Right? Mars doesn't have... You talk about a place that's unlivable.
Yeah.
People are acting like the Earth is going to be unlivable, but that Mars isn't.
Right.
Right? And I'm pro putting... That'd be cool.
If Elon Musk can make Mars livable, I'm pretty sure that same talent can be applied to keeping Earth livable.
Yeah, people talk about terraforming. It's like, we apparently can't terraform Earth.
Yeah, right.
We already live here. What are you talking about? You're insane. And people just... And you just got to say these things. Like, you just connect... Because a spell works and you meander the spell.
Right.
You start like, oh, there's CO2, and it's going to the ozone... And then the ocean levels and the penguins, the polar bears who can't swim, they're going to drown.
Yep.
And Indonesia, third world migration, runaway global warming, Venus, we need to... And it's just meanders. Then you go, wait a minute. You're saying that Mars is going to be more habitable than here? That doesn't... None of that... Even if it did turn into Venus, it would be more... This would be more habitable than Mars. You know, I mean, it's like, Okay. So, speaking of nuclear bombs, by the way, that's also a spell. Do they exist? Again, yes. Probably. I think so. I'm just saying, a bit like the moon landing, it's one of those things that no one's ever seen happen today.
Yeah.
We just really saw it on videos. But
right.
You can fake anything in a video. And I know people are like, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Listen. I went to a talk by the guy that flew the Enola Gay. The Enola Gay was the plane that supposedly dropped the fat man.
Right.
Or the little boy. I don't remember. One of the bombs on it. And there were a couple of things about it. One, that guy belonged in the Nuremberg trials. You talk about people that just said, I was just following orders.
Right.
And the guy that dropped the nuclear bomb out of the plane onto Hiroshima, he was up there and he's like, well, they were like, do you feel guilty about it? I was like, no, we're just doing what we did. I was like, you dropped a nuclear bomb on a bunch of kids. Like, on a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? You don't... What, and then it's like, I don't know. It's like, a lot of the reason there's so much PTSD is we fought in our soldiers. I think, my opinion, is that we fight a lot of bad, unjust wars that they know are unjust.
Yeah.
It's like, I have PTSD. Maybe you shouldn't have killed a grandma.
Yeah. Maybe
you wouldn't feel as bad.
Right.
If you didn't drop a nuclear bomb on top of a bunch of kids. I don't know. But okay. Anyway, so that was one, is that the people that did that were easily at the same mindset as the Nazis. Mm-hmm. So, like, thinking that we had a moral superior, it's very dubious. I've always said that. They're like, oh, but the Nazis were so bad. It's like, yeah, but we did drop nuclear bombs on kids.
Yeah.
That also seems real bad. Mm-hmm. And people are like, well,
Well.
Okay, okay, so, and again, okay. But, so anyway, do they exist? Probably. I think so. Right? But all the stuff around them doesn't exist. Like nuclear winter, never gonna happen.
Yeah.
That was literally, and you can look, this isn't even disputed, Russian propaganda made up by Russian scientists to spook Americans into being more timid about using their nuclear bombs. They're like, oh, well, you can't bomb us because if you do, you will also suffer. See?
Really? That whole thing was just, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
There's no, the whole thing, that would not happen. It doesn't, the amount of dust it would kick up into the sky is simply not enough to block out the sun.
If you think about like the volcanoes that go off in Iceland every now and again,
right.
That's a tremendous amount of ash.
So much more.
Yeah.
Than what, and it doesn't, no. I know Bill Gates wants to block out the sun.
Right.
But I'm afraid he's going to have to look elsewhere. Right? So, again, also, radioactive fallout is bad for you. It also, however, dissipates fairly rapidly. Mm-hmm. Like within the course of a couple of months. And the big chunk of it is gone in 2 or 3 days. Because by definition, radioactive means it decays away. It doesn't render the whole world uninhabitable or prevent crops from growing or all that nonsense. I mean, just look at Hiroshima today. It's a bustling city.
Yeah.
Where people live. And Nagasaki also.
And they had it rebuilt really quickly, too. I mean, how many years did it take them to have a city again?
Like 5.
Yeah.
The trains were running the next day in Hiroshima.
Really?
They kept the trains running the whole time. People act like it's a fear-mongering spell. Like, oh, we can destroy the whole. Like, no, you can't. You can't destroy the whole world. You can make a big bomb that's unpleasant. Yes, but the trains in here never stopped. In fact, there was a guy, a Japanese gentleman who was a businessman. He was too old to be in the war. Or no, wait, he wasn't too old because he had some issue where he wasn't in the war. I don't know why. But anyway, he was a businessman. He was traveling on business to Hiroshima, and the bomb went off. He survived. Then he got on a train and went home to Nagasaki, where the second bomb went off. And he was feeling like he had a lot of bad luck. And then he lived to be 80-something. No cancer or anything like that. He lived through 2 nuclear explosions. He lived through both nuclear warheads ever used in war, 100% of them, and he lived to be like 84.
Amazing.
Right? Okay, so there's also people in the village right in the heart of Chernobyl that never left.
Yeah.
They never, ever moved. You can look them up. This is what I mean. Like, the government only can really make you do something if you go along with it on some level. Like, especially if there's a community of you. Mm-hmm. Because the communist government, for all of its power, was like, you gotta get out. And these babushkas were like, no, this is where my beets grow. And I have to make the borscht. And they never left. And they were like, whatever. And nothing really ever happened.
Yeah.
They had a slight increase in cancer incidence. Mm-hmm. Okay, the radiation isn't good for you, but it's also not that bad. It's not like if you have extra, you're gonna get. Doesn't work like where there was a slight uptick in birth defects. Yes, however, also the wildlife came back in abundance. Mm-hmm. Right, because radiation is not a very good cancer-causing agent. It's way less effective at causing cancer than, like, your diet, probably.
Yeah.
You know? Yes, if you get tons of it, it is. If you go into a nuclear reactor at a power plant and you hug a fuel rod, you're going to have problems. I agree. However, that's not what most people are doing when they get worried about radiation, right? Okay, so global warming spell. This is because it's all just fear. It's playing on your primal. All of these things prey on your primal senses of fear, guilt, and shame. Okay, which is, for me, that's the one of the primary freeing mechanisms that Christianity provides. Is it frees you from fear, guilt, and shame.
Amen.
And then that's when people get rid of it and they fall victim to all these spells so easily.
Yeah.
You know? And it's because they're like they have tons of guilt and no way to offload it. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, they don't have God to confess to or a priest or anything. They have shame because they do a lot more sin, usually. Though not always. And they have a lot of fear because there's nothing after the grave, or, and they just die and go into an eternal abyss.
Mm-hmm.
Or they think they're going to hell, which is, arguably worse. So, okay, and Black Lives Matter is a spell, right? It's a spell you absorb differently based on who you are, right? If you're black, BLM functions a lot like Fox News watchers, like in fear of like Biden's going to take my guns, mandatory vaccine. Oh no, oh no. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh no, white people are going to kill us. They're going to kill my son. They're going to shoot him if he's in the street driving while black. He'll get shot for iced tea and Skittles. The whole system is against us. Yeah. It's the same fear. It's the same fear on the other side.
Yeah.
It's just if you're a white person, it functions as a guilt spell, right? But look, the cathedral, by which I mean the system, only gives black people their special privileges if they play in their victim role.
Yeah.
If a black guy wants to be a good family man and a dad, they throw him under the bus.
True.
If he wants to be a 35-year-old gangbanger still trying to make it as a rapper, they love him.
Mm-hmm.
They love him. Now, they'll never talk about him, but if a cop shoots him when he pulls out a knife on somebody, they'll throw a fit. But they only care about him when he's dead.
Right.
Only after he's actually gone. While he's alive, they don't, in his little hell, they don't care. Mm-hmm. They set them up as farm animals. Right? So it's a fear spell, right? So this is how spellcraft works, and it all functions on, again, this presentation, disappearance, restoration. When you think of like we're gonna present Florida to you,
mm-hmm.
then we're gonna take it away. Now, it doesn't matter for the stage magic. It doesn't matter if it actually goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can see the magician's hand behind his back, the whole thing stops.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you see him slip the thing into his pocket. But the illusion created by the media is sufficient for the disappearance.
So, like, you don't have to actually see Florida inundated with water. You just have to believe that it's going to happen in the future.
Right. Or like it's right on the precipice.
Or you have to imagine it. Yeah.
Just like you don't have to see people. You don't have to see a fair election.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to frame it that way. You just have to, right? It's all of this. It's
an unfair election. You could
it's problem,
play that
crisis,
both ways.
Solution. Like watch this. Here's problem. People do not have enough money. They don't have insurance. They don't have. They have trouble meeting their basic. There's income inequality. It's really bad. Crisis. Coronavirus. Mm-hmm. Solution. Universal basic income.
Yeah.
Abracadabra.
Mm-hmm.
Abracadabra. Like this. Oh, look.
And we've already test run the UBI with a couple of little checks that got sent out.
We made the small businesses disappear. Abracadabra.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Also, 9/11, bit of a spell.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, now you see them, now you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just think of that image. Like, today the towers are here, now they're not. Like, right? Then you got to build it back because you have to have the restoration. However, when you finish the restoration, the spell is over, which is why they can't complete the thing.
Yeah.
Until they finish their Mideastern campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about how long is that tower finished yet? It's not, is it?
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
If it was finished, they didn't really hype it very much.
Right. Let's see. New Trade Center Tower.
I think it's called Freedom Tower.
Yeah, Freedom Tower. Oh, the Freedom Tower.
Is it being used?
Is the main building of the rebuilt World Trade Center. It's being used. I think so.
Well, it's just interesting that we didn't know that. I mean, you'd think it would, but if they want the spell to continue,
Right. So it's there. It was finished 2013, maybe. They never talk about it. But anyway, so what you would do to finish it is you would have a big fanfare of the tower and a big thing, and then the spell would be over, right? So you finish the tower, and you have a big ceremony about ta-da!
But
what's lacking right now is
Assad is still in charge of Syria, so we can't have that yet.
Right, so you can't do the ta-da moment of like, ba-da-ding, right? Because then the spell's over.
Right.
And then people are like, why are we still there? Like, this is one reason why I'm skeptical the vaccine will materialize as soon as people think it will. Like, they're teasing it now.
Yeah.
But then the spell will be over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they've had problem crisis solution.
Yeah.
Presentation, disappearance, restoration. Like, health, poof, back.
Yeah.
Right? And like I say, people are like, but do they really plan this out? Does it matter? First of all, yes. First of all, they do. Bill Gates planned a coronavirus epidemic thing. He war-gamed an epidemic in October 2019. Also, you ever seen that show Project Runway?
Yes, I saw this.
In 2019, Project Runway had a contestant named COVID, a blonde-haired guy.
With a K.
With a K. His name was COVID, whose get-up included a surgical facial mask, a fancy surgical facial mask.
Yeah.
Project in 2019, in April, a guy named COVID. There was also, in 2018, there was a German, was it German or French? I forget. I think it was German, maybe Austrian, cartoon, which you can still find. It still runs publications. It makes new episodes, but it's a comic strip, rather. Mm-hmm. Like a Dilbert.
Yeah.
Sort of that same sort of cartoon style, also, a Dilberty. And it takes place, it's basically the misadventures of the Gauls under the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. It's not a very good cartoon, because most people aren't interested in Roman-era Gauls. But you know, like Hagar the Horrible?
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Right.
But a German's drawing it, and it's about these fat Gauls with these big mustaches that are sort of laboring under the inconsistencies of the Roman Empire, which is always a critique on modern politics framed in the ancient world.
Okay.
In that one, in 2018, they had a big chariot race to bring the Roman Empire was having trouble and was crumbling, and so Caesar decided they would have a big chariot race to bring everybody together. Mm-hmm. Okay, a big circus, and so all the nations of the world come and participate in this circus. And the winner of the chariot race is wearing a gold mask, and he's being driven by a little man named, and it's so named Coronavi.
Ooh.
A gold mask, and he's being driven by named Coronavi. It might go so far as to call it just coronavirus. It was pretty blunt.
Weird.
And then he wins the circus, and then he removes his mask, his golden mask, again a mask, and he reveals himself to have been Caesar behind the whole thing, behind the whole panic. Because he says, and this was the vehicle I used to show the world that they still needed the empire.
Ooh, weird.
I know! And that was like 2 years ago. So this whole, and there was so, like we talked about with the Project Cygnus in the UK, but it's all, yes, it was planned. Okay, fine. But also, it doesn't need to be planned, because the magic formula is there in the fabric of the universe. Like, the first thing you do with a baby is you play peekaboo. Mm-hmm. Which is the same. It's like, hello, disappear, ta-da.
Yep.
Peekaboo. It's what God does. That's why the Bible is always talking about God hiding his face. Mm-hmm. God's playing peekaboo. He really is like God's like, I've hidden my face. I will turn my face back. I've hidden my face. He does that all throughout the Bible. Mm-hmm. Right? Back and forth. Because God plays peekaboo, because you have to, well, it's for very deep reasons. But that's just built into the way the universe works, is that now you see it, now you don't. And that's why the Hindus have this concept of Maya, which is the world is an illusion. Yeah. And they don't mean by that everything is fake, but that your conception of the world is always colored by these sorts of spells. It's now you see it, now you don't. Mm-hmm. Like, so much of what you believe is not real. So much of what I believe is not real. It's amazing how many things there are that aren't.
Yeah.
So anyway, spells. Real quick, I know we're running on, but so that's one level spell. Another level spell someone asked me about is, okay, I get that the elites do like Bohemian Grove and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they go into the old tunnels of the subway systems in Europa,
Mm-hmm.
and they wear their mask and dress up like Pan. But like, why do they do that? Like, people are like, why would if they're doing black magic, why do demons care about silly people dancing nude
Okay.
in a mask
Mm-hmm.
or whatever? Why does it work? Okay, this is a deeper, because there's this whole stagecraft illusion, and that's part of magic. There's also like, you can also summon spirits,
Mm-hmm.
and people are like, why can you summon? Okay, why do you need like black masses and sex magic and like murdering people and blood rituals to get a demon to listen?
Right.
The simple answer is that because demons are very, very depressed. It's true. They're also, if you've ever been in depression,
Yeah.
you feel like you can barely move.
Right.
Nothing excites you. Nothing matters enough to care about. Which is why the only things that reach you when you're depressed are very intense things, like pornography or drugs or sugar or whatever. Like, you need these big high things to even move the needle.
Yeah.
And so demons are sort of, they're there, but they're also already dead. Much like a virus. Just saying.
Just
as
saying.
an aside, I do question virology in general because viruses are not alive. And we ascribe to them a lot of behavior of living things. But if you put them in a petri dish, they just sit there.
Yeah.
They can't move on their own. They're sort of inanimate objects. It's a bit suspicious. But anyway, back to they're already dead. So to bring them up out of the grave, you have to do this intense spectacle of like pain and sex and death. And then that even gets to depressed people on 4chan spend a lot of time looking at people either having really degrading sex or getting their heads chopped off by ISIS.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing. The dead spirit requires the intense thing to rouse it.
Mm-hmm.
And since hell is an inverted pyramid, the more powerful demons, quote unquote, are further at the bottom. They're actually more dead, right? So you have to do a more, like, if you just want a normal little demon, you can just whip out a Ouija board and, something. There's a normal little demon. If you want like Beelzebub, you gotta do some stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, and people do.
Yeah.
Like, I was reading about a cult the other day. They practiced black magic, and she was complaining. She went to a priest. She was like 60.
Mm-hmm.
She went to a priest complaining of being demonically possessed, as so many of us do. And she was like, well, have you done anything that could have got you demon possessed? And she was like, no, I don't know what happened. I was just baking cookies. Turns out, after some needling, that in her youth, she had been involved in a sex cult, which attempted to do magic by getting pregnant and then for the purpose of aborting it.
Oh, no.
Right? And that's how they would summon spirits. And this gave them she was a very wealthy woman. It does do things. Like, you can summon it, but you have to if you want to get a powerful demon, you gotta really do bad, because you got to bring them up, just like the guys on 4chan who have to look at very hardcore pornography or people getting like massacred in order to pass the time because they're dead inside. Same thing. Like, the demonic is so depressed and so down, and like that it requires these extreme, because they can't feel joy, but they can feel pain and hatred and like lust. So you have to bring that up to spark them to life again. You have to use a lot of kindling. Is the idea.
So is clinical depression and demon possession, are they coincident with each other in some way?
They're sometimes coincident. They're not the same. Sometimes one is caused by the other.
Okay.
But it is often, I'd say depression is almost always indicative of a bad spiritual state. Not always, but Like sometimes people get hit in the head and stuff.
Yeah.
And they, but like I said, hell's an inverted pyramid, and this is why you shouldn't be jealous of or envious of the people at the quote unquote top, like the elites, so called.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're more of a slave than anybody. Like Governor Newsom, or what Governor?
Governor Gavin.
Newsom.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call him Governor. Governor is out there imposing these strict lockdowns on people, right?
Yep.
But also the people want him to do it. He's at the top of the hell hierarchy, which means he's at the bottom because it's an inverted pyramid.
Right.
He's closer down to the bottom. But imagine if he came out there tomorrow and was like, "Hey, you know what? It's actually no big deal. Everyone chill out." People would fire him. He'd be gone.
Yeah.
They want this. Like,
it's true.
If Cuomo came out and was like, "Hey, everyone go back. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Go hug we don't need a vaccine. They would throw him under the bus instantly.
Yeah.
He's more of a slave than any of them. He has nipple bar piercings. Cuomo gets up there in his old Italian body with his nipples pierced with bars, and then people pointed out, he's like, "Oh, those are bandages. I have very sensitive nipples. I got to cover them with bandages because my shirts, like, they make my nipples bleed." It's like, first of all, you got a problem if your shirts make your nipples bleed. Get softer shirts.
Oh, man.
2, those are clearly piercings.
Right.
It's like just look up Cuomo's nipple piercings. He's like a 60-year-old Italian man who does BDSM nipple piercing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's more of a slave. He has to be in this more than anybody. It's like the mafia. Hell is like the mafia. If you're a surface level guy, you can walk away. If you've whacked a couple of people, you're in it for life.
Mm-hmm.
And getting out requires a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
Maybe your death.
Mm-hmm.
That's how this works too. So when people are like, with these, they never get punished. They are in hell more than you can ever believe. These people that do these, yeah.
Back up just a little bit, because you made a really interesting point about the people want Gavin Newsom and Andrew Cuomo to do these things.
Right.
So if your situation in your city or state is oppressive to you, you need to understand that most of the people living in that city or state want what is going on, and that's why it's being done.
Yeah.
Like, you are, if you don't like it, you're in the minority of people, and maybe you should consider a move because you're not gonna take the majority of people and change them to want what you want. It's not gonna happen. Every
tyrant is democratically elected.
Yeah.
In the sense that they all sort of want it. Like, because look, they can't do anything if it's like people taking your guns. Like, they're not gonna take your guns unless you let them take your guns because you have the gun.
Right.
Just, it doesn't. That's like the idea that Cuomo is by himself, and this is another spell because people like to do the sin and have their agency removed.
Mm-hmm.
They like to feel like they had no choice.
Yeah.
I had to. Like,
right.
But this is part of the spell.
It's a cop-out.
Right. George Bush killed not one person in the Middle East. He made you do it.
Yeah.
Right? The U.S. government didn't make that guy drop a bomb on children in Japan. He did that. Mm-hmm. They make you do it. Right?
Yeah.
And so people are like, well, I just had to. It's like, no, you didn't. Again, like a 2-year-old trying to put him in a car seat is a problem if they don't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
You have to cooperate with the evil. And we all do it. I'm not on a high horse here. Everyone's done it. We'll all do it again.
Yep.
Right? But you need to understand, take the responsibility for it. That keeps you from doing it more often. Because you lose this cop out of like, they made me. Right? They didn't make you. You just didn't want to deal with the problems they were going to throw up about it.
Yeah.
Or in some level, you wanted to do it and then just wanted an excuse.
As often happens.
As often happens.
Many such cases.
Many such cases. So, I guess in summary, don't be too worried about PCR tests and don't do sex magic to summon demons.
Don't do it.
Is what we're saying. And also, the monoliths are probably not real. And and the Project Bluebeam in full effect. It's all crazy.
Wait.